But having said that, let's start here in Canada with that migration stuff.
Yeah, so exactly. The Canada side is a little different. Like you said, it sounds a little more promising than the States. So the Fed just introduced, or said, I guess, announced that they're expecting to do 500,000 people immigrating into the country in 2025. To put that in perspective, I guess they're saying last year, which I think is really this year, was 400,000.
Yeah.
The coming year is 465,000, 2024. And then for 2025, they're expecting 500,000 people. I'll say right up the front because every podcast.
You nailed it, Neal.
Yeah, I've been screaming that they're going to. I'm still not convinced that this is for sure. Things can change. Things can change. Tell me things can change. Tell me things can't change. But a bunch of people messaged after the last episode and the last couple episodes where I'm like, the only thing I can see them doing is freezing up immigration if they don't come up with a plan to help people build housing. But let me finish on why they're saying they want to crank up this immigration number, and that's because they want to fight job vacancy. And Tiff mentioned it there when he was saying the inflation numbers are crazy, but they really want to be careful with runaway wage growth. And so one way to try and control runaway wage growth on top of increasing interest rates is to have a ton of people available, because if there's more people available, especially skilled people, it'll bring down the job vacancy and hopefully keep wages where they need to be. And so they're saying there's upwards of 1 million vacant positions that they need to fill. And so they're trying to bring in as many people as they can with a preference for skilled immigrants to try and fill in these positions. And in Atlantic Canada, which is local to us, we're expecting a 40% bump. So the rest of Canada is expecting about a 20% bump. They're expecting a 40% bump in the direction of Atlantic Canada with immigration. So it should be interesting.
So I love... I was gonna actually tease you about how you really had your finger on the pulse with this one. Neal goes, "Oh, they're gonna slash immigration," and then they announce a big push towards increased immigration.
Don't worry, the rest of the audience did that for you.
Well, this is this double-edged sword, and we talked about this before. You want to bring in people to fill these job vacancies, and I heard a stat out of the States of something like there are 1.9 available job postings for every one person looking, and this is why. How do you slow down the economy when the labor market is that robust, that shortage of supply, that high demand, whatever you want to call it? It's just going to continue to drive wages higher. If you're looking at it from a positive perspective, maybe that lends itself towards this soft landing. We had a question from someone asking about soft landing. Well, if we could get inflation somehow under control, we may not have the big unemployment that typically accompanies a recession. Right? Like typically, unemployment goes above the normal rate during a recession, but we could, because we're so oversaturated, we're so overemployed, that we could have a situation that we are able to pull down these prices while keeping unemployment in the healthy range. But these things tend to move in opposite direction. Like you need unemployment to slow inflation.
Now, here's my one concern with it is that, on to the unemployment fact. I'm not going to say it's just because this is a housing podcast, but we need the housing for these people. We have the housing crisis. And with the costs and the rates and everything the way they are now, it's very difficult for a developer to provide affordable housing or for someone to afford a home. And I just heard that home builders in this city are starting to do mass layoffs. I've had three calls this week alone that some of the largest developers and home builders in this city are beginning with layoffs, which...
These would be presumably like subtrades that they would have brought in-house, and now they're probably...
Exactly. So they're starting to cut loose a lot of their subtrades that they had in-house to try and reduce costs and to increase their efficiency, on and on and on. But so people are starting to make those layoffs. So they need to do something to incentivize housing. Like this is where they need to offer developers and builders and these kinds of people with, like, whether it be a tax break or cheap money or something, because what's going to happen here is those job vacancies... The job postings are going to start to drop, right? Because it's more costly for money. A lot of companies are going to start to pan down. Like this is going to, again, remedy itself faster than we think. Like it's, we have 1 million job vacancies, so we need 1 million people. No, I bet you of those 1 million job vacancies, a quarter, if not half of those, will end up getting sucked up by the fact that people are actually going to start slowing down on their spending, and these companies are going to start to remove some of these job postings.
Right.
Additionally, there's going to be companies that are laying people off, so they're going to fill up the other spaces.
That's kind of the hope, as sick as it sounds, right? Like you need that, you need layoffs, you need people to stop hiring effectively to get this under control. The problem is the obvious double-edged sword is you bring in all these people and we have nowhere to house them. Because here's the thing, like we brought in somewhere like upper 400,000 people so far this year, or we're on path track for that. So to target more people than that moving forward, we haven't solved the situation for the people we have, even just domestically, let alone new PRs, because these are all going to be permanent residents. The other thing is we bring in, I don't know, 150, 200,000 international students and people on like working visas.
Mm-hmm.
So call it 650,000 people, give or take a year.
Yeah.
We've seen that really aggressively here locally, the challenge with student housing, and not to dwell too much on our own municipality, our own provincial government, but they're now looking at ways to effectively have privatized student housing options and how to fast track those things. I don't know if you saw that,
yep.
That's coming down the pipe too. Like, we can't house the students, but we're going to continue bringing in 150 to 200,000 international students and work visa folks. We can't house our own people, but we're going to bring in 450 to 500,000 new PRs every year. And yes, we need them to fill these labor roles, but like, this is a chicken and the egg, like, classic problem we have on our hands here.
What, just question for you, what percentage of the Canadian population do you think is considered to be, I think it's first-gen immigrant?
Oh, gosh. What would it be, second generation? How's that work? Is the first generation
not born in Canada, but living in Canada.
Gosh, I've already guessed.
What percentage of our current population?
Let's see. We're up from 30 million to, I think we're about 40 million right now.
It's the Matrix right now. These numbers flying around Chandler's head.
No, but
yeah, around 40 mil.
So we're up probably about 10 million in the last 15 years. Most of that's going to be immigration. So I don't know. I would say around 25 to 30%.
I hate that was actually how that worked out, but yeah, I think it's 26%. Oh, God. I regret my question. I'd like to take that back.
Episode over.
We're going to cut that section out.
So if you guys want to unpack, I'm going to unpack the math because I'm feeling
If you divide
myself,
10 by 40.
Right? No. So I don't know. I don't have the population here, but I remember about 15 years or so, like, we were always right around 30 to 32 million.
30, exactly.
And now we're right around 40. So we've grown by, I don't know, 10 million people over this last 15 or so years. People are going to hammer those stats because I don't have Google here in front of me.
Yeah.
But domestically, that's not from us having babies. It's not. Like, we are not reproducing. The Western world in general is not reproducing at a rate that actually moves the needle and
our
grows
birth rate's slower than our death rate.
Yeah. So that growth had to be effectively 100% migration. And so then I just did a little bit of math, a little numerator denominator, and I came up with that bang on stat.
Forward.
When I was broke, I had rich habits. When I was broke, I had rich habits.